Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Mosaic Podcast. You know, sometimes I have on shows people that I've never met and then I'm meeting them for the first time here on the show. And I love those situations because I love the synchronicity of what happens, of not knowing anything about a person. I love the possibilities that emerge when people who never even knew each other 18 seconds ago suddenly sit together and share in a resonance that is unbelievable. But that's not the case today. I'm bringing to you a friend, and I've only known him a short while, but he's a dear brother of mine. He's a friend. His name is Filippo Voltaggio. I had the honor of him contacting me to be on his show that was in this beautiful Vortex Dome up in LA. And we drove up to LA, which is something I don't normally do for shows, but I was so happy I did it. And I met the team of people that he works with, and we had just this beautiful show because he has this a show called Life Changes. But something happened in the course of that time. There's some times where you meet people and you don't know why, but you just feel such a natural affinity and a love for them. And that was the first thing that happened when I met Filippo. I just saw him and I just felt my heart go out to him, and I just loved him. And over the course of time, we've had some conversations. We thought about doing some business things together. We thought about, helping, because I just love everything he's doing. And for whatever the reasons, that's not happening right at this moment. It doesn't mean it won't happen down the line. But this man is a creative volcano. There's so much that comes through him. And part of my conversations with him, I want to hold off and talk to you about on podcast with him, because in the green room, he told me about a conversation he had that he knew would excite me. And I want to bring him on right now, and we're going to go into that conversation. Filippo, welcome to the Mosaic Podcast. It's such an honor to have you. I so look forward to having you. And for people who want to know more about you, he has like 30 websites here. I'm going to invite you to, I'm going to have them all in the show notes. But I think the one, which is the most important for people to go to so that they know who you are?
First of all, hello, Danny. Thank you for that introduction.
I'm already in. I passed 3 exits on the freeway.
Well, in answer to your question, the Life Changes Show, lifechangeshow.com, where we had the pleasure of meeting, and the feeling was instantly mutual.
Thank you.
With you and Anna, I might add.
Yeah, you can feel it. You walk into a room and you just immediately feel this connection. And it's one of the things I love most about Mosaic, is because there's no reason that should happen. There's no history. There's at least no tangible history that we can come up with right now. But yet you meet somebody and you just say, whoa, this is my brother. I just feel it. I feel this is my brother, my friend, somebody that I've known for 1,000 years, and you haven't even known him for 18 seconds. So thank you for slowing me down, and thank you for welcome. So,
thank you for having me on.
It's my
honor.
But right at the same time, right? So, why I wanted him to put his website out is I want you, even while you're listening, to just go to lifechangeshow.com. You'll see he's interviewed some of the most amazing people, but you'll get a feeling for him. And I want you to check out all the stuff down below, because he does tons of different things. And hopefully we're going to address some of those. But let's get a conversation going, okay? One of the things that I ask every podcast to start is, what did your parents do?
Right. Actually, you know what? I knew that there would be a question about parents. I forgot it would be that one. It was a while since I've heard a couple of your podcasts, and enjoyed them, I might add, and learned from them. Thank you. My father, who's no longer with us, was a professor of languages, mainly Italian and Spanish. And though he didn't learn English, as his first language, he knew English better than a lot of people I know. So he actually taught us English here in America. So technically he taught that language too. And my mother was we used to call them housewives. I don't know what the word is now,
Yeah.
but a house mother back in the day when there was a lot of work to do, and my mother and dad had two parents. I mean, four kids and uh, 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 my dad's mother-in-law, my mom's mother, and a dog.
All lived in the same house with you. So you had you have three brothers and sisters.
Yes.
And your parents were.
I don't know where I am. What happened?
No,
we
well,
did this meditation before we even started the show. You had me laughing. You almost had me crying. Like, my dad had a mother-in-law. Oh, my mom's mother. And
and this is how it really was from the start. It was sort of this like, hold it, what's happening? But also there's something beautiful in it, because if you think about what's really happening, the energy that's existing is so strong that it almost uproots the reality of the things that are going on, and you just get absorbed in that energy. It happened to me when I was introducing you. You know, it was probably, you know, I never start by giving a person's website. I haven't done that in 55 podcasts, okay? But that's how eager that I want people to get to know you. So growing up with a dad that was a professor and a mom that was a housewife, which was, you know, that's how my family was too. My mom did work a little bit. She was a secretary in our synagogue, but by the time we got home from school, she was home and there were cookies and milk on the table, and, you know, she was a mom. Today, oftentimes we live in society and families where the parents are working and kids grow up somewhat on their own. Which of your parents did you most want the approval of, or which one did you look up to more?
Those feel very different to me. So
okay.
I'm going to say I most wanted the approval of my father.
Okay.
For starters.
And why did they seem different, the questions? So
who did I look up to? I looked up to my father. But I looked up to my mother in a way that was different, in a way that potentially informed so much of what I do, in that she was so strong, she was so smart, she did so much, and she didn't get the credit, I thought, because we lived very much in a patriarchal family structure. And my father was definitely the quote unquote breadwinner. But there, at the beginning, for example, my dad might have brought home the bread, but if my mother didn't know what to do with it, we wouldn't have had enough to eat, kind of thing, right? And so technically she was the breadwinner too. And so I felt that there wasn't enough credit being given to my mother. And then having grown up in an Italian community, even though we were in America, I felt that women were underestimated and not giving women in that culture that I grew up with. And so for those reasons, I think I looked to my mother and saw strength and inner beauty and power and all that wasn't necessarily obvious to other people.
Yeah. And did any part of you, resent is too harsh a word, but did any part of you look at your dad and say, why can't you see what I see in mom?
Well, there were many points of contention between my father and I, because I would tell him what I would think it was appropriate to tell him what to do, and what to do come Valentine's, or what to do come Christmas, or or something like that. And whether or not they were right for him, and my mom's relationship, I just felt the need to do that. And I would often get either beaten for that or reprimanded
Wow.
for that. Uh, uh, so so it was an interesting dynamic. I kept it up though. Again, I never really thought about it this way, and thank you for bringing it up, because it did inform so much about so much of what I do, in that I too, like you, look, as you were saying before we even started the interview, look for things that are not obvious but could be potentially very big.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there was a lot of that, I think, growing up, and not to put down the culture or the time that it was. There was, I believe, my parents did better than so many people from their generation for each other and for their community and their family in many ways. And so it it also informs my need to even expand what they provided, as opposed to focusing on what they didn't, unless I'm using that to help other people understand certain situations, or myself even.
So if you can, and if you're willing to, go and drop down into that a little bit. Like, what specifically did you see in what they were doing that you wanted to either expand upon or adapt or rediscover or recreate in a way that would allow you to show up differently than they were showing up?
So much, so much. And I don't think it's because I was critical. It's because maybe I either saw so much, or I was sensitive, or I had something that just recently, like in the past couple days, I called my mother, and I had called her a couple days. I call her every day, but uh, I called her at a different time than I normally would, a few times prior, and she was in this not so happy place, and having a difficult time, and we talked it through. And she said, I don't know how you do this, but you can always help me, et cetera, et cetera. So then a couple days later, I called at a completely different time, and she was having another moment. And she says, there's something about you. And I said to her, maybe for the first time ever, yeah, Mom, there's always been something about me.
Yeah.
And that has been the blessing and the curse.
Yeah.
So that, whatever that is about me, I used to see, feel, think, and I used to say, and I used to be told, that's just, here's a funny example that I've shared when I've sung for Italian American or Jewish American, or actually many cultures. I have to share this, that at the very beginning of my singing career, when I started telling stories, because I love telling stories, and I started telling stories of growing up Italian American and the language and the some of the issues that came up, because even though I was born in America, I learned Italian first,
Wow.
since my parents were both from Italy and my dad was an Italian professor. So I had my own language things as I was learning English, but at a very young age, obviously, and I was able to do it quickly enough, without as much of the drama and the trauma that a lot of people in my parents' community went through,
Yeah.
that I saw. And some of it was absolutely funny. So I would share it, and in a loving way, it's like, I feel your pain kind of thing, and we can laugh about it now. And I remember this woman she was Asian, and she came up and said in her accent, the same thing happened to me. And I thought, in my small way of thinking at the time, I was thinking, how could that word that I used, or that story, how could that be the same for somebody from an Asian country?
Right.
And what eventually I figured out that she was saying, it might have taken me a while, but she's saying, we all have these kinds of experiences.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she wanted to connect with me, saying, you and I, we've had the same experience.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that she wanted to connect that way. And
Yeah.
now I get it, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, but I shared that story, and I'm trying to remember. Oh, so on stage, I've shared many stories, and then before I've sung a song like "That's Amore" or something like that, that I also use in a funny way. I said, I remember one time hearing two people yelling at each other and asking my mom, "Mom, what's going on with him and her?" And she said, "They're married." And I
Wow.
said, but but why are they yelling at each other?
Right.
And she said, "They're in love."
Wow.
And I thought, oh, something doesn't feel right about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's interesting that my mom might have said it as a joke. You know, I don't remember now exactly the details, but some of us as children, we're sensitive. I think all of us are.
Yeah.
And then we lose it, or we shut it down, or we build our walls.
Yeah. When was the first time you realized that how sensitive you were?
I used to say things, and then I was told, you don't know what you're talking about, and there's no way you know that. And so, but I felt like I did, and then things would come to pass, or I'd have a dream and I'd share it, and then it would come to pass. And so I think it was very young that I realized, and very young that I shut it down.
How old was very young that you realized?
Young enough to remember. I would say probably even before kindergarten,
Wow.
or like around that time.
Wow. And so I'm sure there are people that are listening that have similar memories of having this feeling of just knowing something that they shouldn't know, or there's no way they could know.
Mm.
How in the world would they know it? I still have those occurrences today. I speak with somebody that I've only met 18 seconds ago, and I'm saying something to them that there's no possible way I could know, right? I call them soul sessions. It's what I do in my work sometimes. Is sometimes their soul is so hungry to say something, and there's so much noise within their system that they themselves can't hear it, it just asks me to say to them. And I fight it so often because I don't know them. I don't know them well enough. And I know that I shut that down too. So when you shut that down, what suddenly gave you permission to reopen the door?
Oh, definitely not suddenly. And it's been a process of opening the door. Certainly some opening and shutting when it, it was like I shared in a recent show where I cut myself shaving, and I had learned not too long ago that the saliva has a built-in something or other, enzyme or something, that if we lick, and that's why animals lick their paws,
Wow.
so the saliva has it. So if we just put a little bit of saliva on our face, it clears up right away. And it was before a Life Changes show taping. And the interesting thing is I thought, what took me so long to learn that?
Well, I'm
And
65 and I'm just learning it now. I didn't know that.
right.
Right?
So I wish I knew the exact science behind it or biology, but now I'm going to have to look it up, because that was maybe last week's show that I shared that. But the whole point of that is that seems so odd that that's possible. And it's
Yeah.
also odd that if it is possible, how come we don't know it? Something as simple as your saliva can stop the bleeding of a small nick or something,
Yeah.
right? So up until a few years ago, it was this product or that product, or it had to come out of a tube, and it's like, it's not from a plant. You can't just cut a plant that you have, and put it's we have to squeeze it out of here or drop it from there, and then you're good to go. And so if we had been raised with knowing that,
Yep.
then what else can that inform as we grow, right? So if I was raised being told that what I knew was not right or I shouldn't share, then sometimes when we're starting to open that door, we might know, but might not know how to share it, or
Yeah.
might not know when it's appropriate to share, right?
So
And
if
that's
you
why
were to,
the opening and closing of the
so,
door.
so if you were to leave the land of we and go to the land of I,
Mhm.
because what I really am interested in is you right now, and not the global masses that we're teaching to or talking to, but just the you and me sitting on the couch. What scares you now about being that open? Why when you know you have this ability, do you still come out and shut the door and come out and shut the door? Why do you do that?
I would say that I'm in the process of opening a little more and little more. The door never gets shut. I might close it a little bit, like, oh, I open it too far, like I let too much air in or too much light in, or something. But yeah, I'm never at this point. I don't feel like I'm shutting it.
Yeah.
Does it scare me? It doesn't scare me. I don't know that would be the word. The interesting thing about it is that I share this about not of having it shut down, or me shutting it down because of what was happening around me. And I actually feel that maybe that was part of my process that I had to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And that potentially if I had continued along that vein, I might not have grown in other ways that I needed to grow to when then everything came together. It's a perfect blend, or as perfect as I can be.
Mm.
So I'm not afraid. If anything, I'm excited because I feel like I've learned so much that now as that gets added, it just all can blossom.
Yeah. It's part of the reason why I'm asking is because I have many of those same sort of feelings and abilities and thoughts. And my wife Anna, who you referenced earlier, as meeting a fabulous woman. She says to me, "I can't believe you get away with saying the things you get away with saying to people. I can't believe you're not dead already, because you talk pretty openly and pretty straightforward to people, and yet people just seem to love you for it. And why is that?" And I said, I it's never with a sense of like trying to expose something in them or trying to change something. It just comes out of this place of love, I just love, and I want to discover because I feel so connected in certain areas to people, and I just want to know how they go through what they go through, so it can shine light on what I'm going through as well. And even today, like, I'll have conversations and I call him the little man in my head. I'll hear the little man in my head speaking to me, and he's sort of an East Coast guy. He doesn't sugarcoat too much. So I listen to him and I try and sugarcoat it, and make it nicer. And sometimes I'll just say, I'm just not going to say that. And when I do that, he hasn't let me off the hook much. And he just says, "I think you ought to." And when I say, so I'll say to people, feel very free to throw this in the trash can, because just because I'm saying it doesn't mean it's true. So if it makes sense to you, deal with it. If it doesn't, just throw it away. I mean, I just have a commitment to tell you what he's telling me, because he's not letting me not tell it to you. I've asked him 4 times not to. And what I find is almost every single time, I can't think of a time where they've said you're off base or you're wrong or it's not what there's that it isn't true. And so even with all that, I still battle with the voice inside my head. And I just wonder what that is. What do you think that is? Like, what do you think it is for you? If you have any insight for me, what do you see in me? You know, like, what is it? What is it that prevents us from really giving voice to the voice that's our voice?
Well, first of all, I don't have a man from back east in my head, so I
Yeah,
can't
you're a
speak to
lucky guy.
that.
You're a lucky guy. I don't think I do really too. I just give him a personality and a shape and a form.
What I have noticed for me is that sadly it's usually when I get frustrated that I'll share some things. Like if I'm trying to help somebody or somebody's asking for help or somebody's not seeing something that feels like they need to see it. I've gotten frustrated before and said, you know, can't you see this, this, and this, and you this, this, and this, and you've done this, this, and I've had people just stop in their tracks saying, how do you know that?
Yeah.
And I don't know how I know that. And
Right.
I've actually tried to give reasons at times, like it's exuding from you. It's in
Yeah.
your face, or and again, since I didn't learn all this, it might be exuding from them. It might be in their face. I don't know, but uh, and now and I know that those experiences have not. Um, it's all been true and potentially all good for all parties involved, including myself, like the people that chose not to be in my life because I shared in that way. Then maybe those people weren't supposed to be in my life as much as I had love for them or what have you. Uh, except interestingly enough, Danny, just yesterday, I had a client who got me there, but it wasn't out of frustration. It was out of love.
Beautiful.
And so I said to her, there are these things. There is this. This has happened before to you.
Yeah.
I can't tell you exactly who and what, but you have done this many times to people. And you've also done this and you've done this. Now, I don't have that experience of her, but I shared in that way.
100%.
I called her today, actually just before this interview. I called her before the first interview that we were going to do earlier this morning. But I wasn't camera ready.
All right. And can you believe this guy's not camera ready? Look at him. He was born camera ready.
Sweet. So she said, I was just thinking of you. And I said, I just wanted to make sure you were okay and you knew where I was coming from. She said, oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I did soul searching and I found this and I found that, and you were right about this and you're right about that. And I feel like today that has come together where I know I was in my heart. And instead of from frustration, which is the only way I knew how to do it before, when I was frustrated with my father that he's not doing this, you know, or my, you know, whatever it was, or my friends or my family, now it was just coming from the heart. It's like, it just feels like if you were done with this, you would be able to live your life more fully, etc.
Congratulations. What do you, like, I know that place because I don't think I ever come out of the place of frustration. I just come out of the place of just love. And I think that's why I can say whatever I say to people, because they can feel the love coming through it.
Mm.
But what changed for you, do you think? What changed from that? What allowed you to finally come to, not finally, to come to that place where you are now saying what you're saying from a place of love rather than from a place of frustration?
You know, I created a course called the Recalibration. And with Dorothy and Mark as well, I would bring to them the situations that I experienced in my life and how I changed from them and all of that. And what it feels like I've been doing is recalibrating all the time, which makes sense. In our mechanical life, we do that. We change the clock and we change the calendar, that we change the season, we recalibrate. It's like, oh, now it's the holiday season, let's decorate. Well, now it's this season of my life. How do I recalibrate into this part of my life? Or now I'm in this career, or now I'm in, now I have a family or children or what have you. We would do well to recalibrate every step of the way,
Right.
in my opinion. So using what I've learned from not only that process for me, but for other people, I would say what has changed is seeing the patterns and recognizing the patterns, and then adding gratitude to the patterns that I like, talking more about those patterns and the results that they achieve, etc. You know, as an interviewer, I remember interviewing in a previous show, and I had just started, and I was interested, and the person I interviewed was a director. One of the very first people was a director who had been interviewed a lot, and I was lucky to get this interview, my first one. And at the end of the interview, he said, "You're really good at this."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, what? I mean, what?
Right.
And I said, "What are you talking about?" Because I thought he was like making fun of me, or. And he says, no, you're really good at this. And I said, how could I be good at this? I've never done this before, and I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And he went on to share the qualities that he found in a good interviewer. And I'm glad I asked him. And then whenever people would make comments, especially at the beginning, I would say, well, what is it? You know, why did you like it so much? Why? And so I focused on that and the results that we're getting there.
Mm-hmm.
When, to be honest, talk about camera ready, there was a time when I said, I can't be an interviewer because I don't look like that interviewer. I don't
Right.
have the experience of that interviewer.
Right.
Look how that guy knows how to point and
Right.
make it look important. I mean, I had all of these things.
Right. Right. Right.
And then you met Dorothy. Dorothy came around, and one point she said, Filippo, hold on. Do you notice that while people are, you're interviewing people, they either scooch closer to you, or
Yeah.
they reach out and want to touch you, or they want to hug immediately afterwards, or they're sharing things with you in ways that they've never shared before. Do you notice? And so that interviewer doesn't have that, and that interviewer who knows how to point, you know, it's just like focus on the qualities that
Yeah.
we have. And so when I would have this information come up out of frustration, it was the only way I knew how to have this information come up. You know, like the water has to boil kind of thing.
Right. Right.
Well, now I have, and at very rare times it would come out differently, and
Yeah.
we'd have a different result, right? So I'd have a different result, we collectively. So focusing more and more on what's good about the times that those and how I shared, and recalibrating, saying, well, that information doesn't only have to come up when I'm frustrated or upset. It can come up when I'm joyful or when I'm wanting to show somebody more love.
Yeah. So is the recalibration program something you guide other people through?
Mm-hmm. I guide other people through, and the course guides themselves through. There's no right answer.
So is it an online course, or is it what is the recalibration program?
I like that idea. And we've got so much going on. So I could see it being online, but right now it's either I teach it or Mark or Dorothy or the three of us, depending on the size of the groups. But right now we're doing it ourselves.
And so if people wanted to get in touch with you to do the recalibration program, would they get that from www.therecalibration.com website?
Yes, actually. You have that one too, huh? The Life Changes show as well, but yes.
Okay, so they can get that from the lifechangeshow.com.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Because I want to make sure that people have that information, because that sounds like a fabulous program. And to have the ability to work with Filippo or Mark or Gloria, right? Dorothy, right? Yeah. I'm notorious for messing up people's names. To have the opportunity to work with them individually or personally or in the group is a fabulous thing. Let's talk about stories. Let's talk about the stories that we tell ourselves and we tell others. And what's your belief system about stories? Being a great storyteller yourself.
Well, I used to love stories, and I'm interested in people's stories, and I believe that the stories that we tell ourselves shape our lives and how we tell ourselves the stories. I also shared during a monologue, maybe just a few weeks ago, about hearing somebody tell me a story and having the person say, "You have to believe me." And I said, "I do." And he was shocked that I did. And he said, "You do? You haven't believed me before." And I said, right. It's not that I didn't believe you before. I believed you believed what you were sharing. But I don't know that that was really what was going on. But now I believe you. And what you're sharing, I believe that's what was going on. And that left him very confused. I was sharing this in a monologue, but it was a client. It left him very confused. And he said, why is it you believe me now? And I said, because it's the way you're sharing your story. Mm-hmm. The energy that you have around the story and around how you're sharing it with me. I get it. It's all congruent.
Yeah. Yeah. Being a big storyteller myself, having written a book that's a story, having telling stories all the time, having the book that I wanted to write, having my muse tell me, "No, you can't write that book because it's not true to who you are." And me saying, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, you're a storyteller, not a self-help person." I know the power of stories. And I know when you tell a good story, how engaging it is. What I'm really interested in is those stories that we tell ourselves that we get so engaged in that have no relevance in truth anymore. What do you do for people that are in that place where they're telling the most exquisite, elaborate, beautiful stories that they believe in and resonate with, and it feels truthful to them? But when you see them the way you see them, because you're able to see things that other people don't see, are really not their stories at all anymore.
It's a really good question, and I suppose since it feels like I'm working with the questions to your answers like right now, and I have a feeling that if you and I were to do another interview in a year from now, that either you would ask the questions that I'm dealing with at that moment, or you might even ask the same questions, and I'll feel like I'm dealing with it right now, because it's an expansive conversation, and it's ever changing.
Yes.
And we're ever learning, those of us who are interested in learning and growing. So I'm dealing with this right now in the sense of accepting where people are, and wherein I used to want to help people change their stories, sometimes they're not ready to change their stories. And that's why the recalibration, I think, works so well, is because they share their story the way they see it to themselves. And then through a series of questions, they share their story again from a different perspective, and then again from a different perspective. And then they can put the pattern together and decide what that means for them. And I'll give you an example. There was a woman who, I was doing the recalibration, and I may again, but it was as an 8-week course. So once a week we would get together as a group. And there was a woman in the group the first week who said to me, while everybody was answering the first set of questions, she said to me, as she called me over, "I don't think this course is for me." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "Do you want to leave now, or do you want your money back? What's the, what do you want to do?" Or, and she's like, "Well," and she didn't want to leave. So she wanted to have a talk.
Right.
And what she wanted to tell me was, and she went into her story. "My childhood was so great. I was so great. I was so pretty. Right. I mean, everybody said it. Everybody knew it, so she wanted to share her story, right. Is why she really called me over. And I said, "Oh, okay. Did you want to leave now?" And she said, "Well, I don't know. Maybe I could stay, but what am I supposed to do?" I said, "Write all that down." She right. said that I was so great. I said, "Yeah, write that down." So she wrote it down. And I will finish this story, but I have to plug in my computer.
Okay.
I am so sorry. It'll take me 30 seconds.
No
Excuse
worries.
me.
No
I hate
worries.
to leave you with that. Hold on.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you.
That's okay.
So, second set of questions, she called me over again, told me the same thing. And I said to her, you can go, but while you're here, just say how wonderful you are, or you were as a child or as a young adult, what have you. And then we would get together after the set of questions, and we would sit in a group and we would all share. And people had some horrific things to share. And she had all these wonderful stories to share. And we all listened and we moved on. By the third set of questions, she didn't call me over, but I looked over and she was crying, sobbing. And I didn't say a word, let her go through her process. So we sat in the group together and we went around, everybody spoke but her. And I didn't want her to feel like she had to if she didn't want to or wasn't ready. So I said, if that's everybody, then we'll move on. And she let out a, "Do you know how hard it was to be thought of as the perfect child? I couldn't be a child. I couldn't this." And I had, and she just, we all were just, wow. And she had such a breakthrough of breaking out of her story, of her story.
Yeah, love that. Love that.
So when people come with their story, as she did, say in the first set of questions, right?
Yeah.
She wasn't ready to break through that. And no matter what I said to her at that point, that there was a time when I might have said, "Well, have you thought of, and what if," sometimes that's appropriate, but sometimes they need to live that part of their story, and we can help them along by helping them with certain questions or something to think about, and accepting that they are there now.
Yeah.
Like I am here now and we'll be in a different place because of what we're doing.
Right. Of course. All of us. I think that's called the process of growing, and allowing the energies of the world to interact with our energies, and Um, what's most surprised you in the work that you do?
Maybe the changes that are possible, the power of transforming, the power of changing our lives. I think, and for myself specifically, I think about so many things. I'd watch movies, or I'd talk to people, or I'd share a deep, dark secret, and I'd cry, and I then I'd think about, why did I say, or why did I do that? Like, why did I relive all of these things that I've been through in my process of getting to here,
Mm-hmm.
and realize that now a movie will come on a subject that, you know, that used to be hard for me, or somebody will share their story, and I feel it, I get it, but I'm not in that place. Like, I've not only forgiven, but more than forgiven, understood, and maybe to a whole other level, am grateful
Yeah.
for so
Love it.
much. Not everything yet,
Yeah.
but so much.
Let me get personal with you if I can. Is that all right?
You mean this wasn't personal?
No, it was a little personal. I want to go even under a little more. We've had some opportunities to have some discussions, and part of our process of discussion was whether we were going to be able to work together, whether I was going to be able to help you in certain capacities. You have these amazing beads that I want to talk to people about, 5 beads, okay, that are absolutely incredibly powerful and beautiful, and I love them, and I want everybody to have them. But I don't want to talk about them right this minute, okay? What I want to talk about is some of the conversations we've had about the creativeness that comes through you, and the conversations that I had with you of how important it was to not dissipate so much. Like, you have so much energy coming through you and spreading it all around and onto all these new ideas. And today, which I hinted at in the introduction, you talked to me about a tomato plant man.
That was for you.
But I believe that for me is like for everybody, because so many people have this tendency to just create. And I see it with authors. When I was at Hay House, they create the next book and they create the next thing, but they don't take the time to sit with the thing that they're doing and go through all of the feelings, all of the emotions, all of the recalibrations that are needed to bring what it is they're doing. Like, when I talk to you about the recalibration program, I can't believe we've never spoken about that before, because that sounds like such a powerful tool that just about anybody in the world could gain benefit from. But it wasn't in any of our discussions that we've had before. So there's and each one of the things you're doing, the 5 beads, are powerful presentation. And so there's so many people that are creating powerful things, and each one of them could take a world of energy or the rest of their life of energy, but aren't getting enough energy. So tell me about what happened for you with the tomato plant man, and tell me about what recalibrated in you that allowed you to go from this eruption of creativity that just would not stop to the advice of the tomato plant man, who sounds like he should have been a character in the Mosaic.
Nice. Actually, yeah, that would be interesting. Well, you have everybody else.
I have almost everybody.
Except the candlestick maker. I don't think there was one of those.
No candlestick maker. There will be. Mosaic too. Just when you thought you were safe.
And the tomato guy.
That's right. Tomato plant man will definitely be in there. So tell us about that, but don't tell us about it also in terms of what happened for you that allowed you to get the knowledge of the tomato plant man.
I have a client who's a singer, and a really great singer, and she she's the caliber of singer that one sees in the big opera houses. She's an opera singer in the big opera houses of the world, etc. And she could have easily been that. As a matter of fact, she was primed for it and all of that. But she's not. Instead, she has a family and children. And I just recently heard her say, I could have been, and I should have been, and I should be. And we haven't gotten there yet. However, I asked her, in other words, the things that you have, the children, the family, that what you've learned, and that has no value to you. And she, what are you talking about? Of course not. That means the world to me. And I said, tell me one of these people that is famous that has the same quality of family and children and all that, that you know as you do. And she said, well, nobody. I wouldn't have been able to have that if I had this. And so I realized that she hadn't, has still not recalibrated what fame means to her, what singing means to her, and what her present life means to her, and what she would have had to do, and maybe she did exactly what she needed to do to be who she is right now. And maybe she has everything she really wanted, and that the other no longer means the same thing. With my singing as an example, something that I take very close to heart, because as a child, I always saw myself on stage singing with orchestra and all that. And I did that. I've done that a lot, actually. And it's the most glorious thing to me. And it means so much. The journey to getting there included so much, not only learning voice and how to use it, but learning about myself. Each step of the way, I was learning. Like when I would do a show with just a piano player or a pianist and a guitarist, I'd have people come to me on occasion saying, that was the best show I ever saw. And I'd think to them, what, you never saw a Las Vegas show? Or what, you never watched TV? I mean, like, it was just a piano player, or me, or, how could this really be the best show? Like, is somebody pulling my leg here? Is there a practical joke? Why would they say that to me? And what they were eventually, I figured out, saying was that they were moved.
Mm-hmm.
They were touched, whether the song selection or the way I sang them or the energy I was putting out, something moved them to make that the best show. And in my mind, the best show means lights, camera, action, dancers, right? And so recalibrating each step of the way. And I have to say, when people say, oh, you're so good at that, or you're so good at that, and I'm grateful, and they say, how do I get good at that? Well, I don't know. My process maybe was singing in order to get good at that.
Yeah.
So I've had to recalibrate along the way and say, what does singing mean to me now? What do PHI Beads mean to me now? What is the recalibration? What is the life changes? And keep, because there is this moment, and in this moment, there is so much I could do, so much I want to do. And the quality to which I want to do it is becoming more and more important to me. And that's something that you were sharing with me as well, is quality and focusing and all that. And I appreciate that. So when we were talking earlier, and you asked me about my singing, I said I wasn't putting focus on my singing. And the reason I said that story is for you. I think I need to use this story now going forward. I need to learn the technical terms because I wasn't prepared. But this man, I watched a video of a man who was a horticulturist or gardener or something. He was growing tomatoes, and he showed how on the tomato plant there were these little, like a shoot, but he had a word for it, a shoot that actually would grow into more tomato plant and more tomatoes. And then he went on to show us plants that had those shoots with tomatoes and lots of leaves and all of that. And he said, it's, in a sense, it's easier to cut them before they get to that part where they actually have tomatoes, because it feels like it's counterproductive to cut off a whole branch that's got tomatoes on it already. But you have to, he said, because he said you could cut that off and you can grow it someplace else as a whole other plant. He said, but for the life of this plant, is what I understood, in order for it to produce the sweetest and best tomatoes, and even more abundantly, this part, even though it has tomatoes on it and will produce tomatoes, has to be cut off for this plant to live its fullest.
And so you made me promise that if you told that story, I would burst into what I did before. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
I forgot that.
Right. And I wanted to be a man of my word. Right. So what's so important, and what I loved in that story, and what I loved especially hearing it from Filippo, is the Filippo I knew 2 months ago, 2 weeks ago, would have never told that story. He would have said, but there's so much fruit that's available. Like, it's growing over here, and it's growing over here, and I can go over here, and I can grow over here. And he wouldn't have seen the maintenance of the main plant and the core value of what that main plant is so valuable. And it just gets sort of diminished a little bit by trying to do too many other things, and all the energy that can go into the core plant now is spread out, going everywhere. And yeah, you can get great fruit from it, but this doesn't get the fruit that it was meant to give. So here's the question, and then I want to go to the final question. Okay, but I'm eager to know what recalibrated in you that allowed you to finally get that, to make the switch from, but all of the branches have tomatoes, why should I cut them, to, I'm going to focus in on this plant.
A friend of mine wrote a book called The Mosaic.
Oh, no. That guy's a creep. Don't listen to him.
On the contrary. And much like in The Mosaic, where the different people were sharing a message, many of the messages looked and sounded different, and they looked different from the people they were coming from and all that. But they all had a core that the boy was learning in the process, right? So in my life, as I'm realizing that so many things, I've created so many things that I love, and I love them all, and I'm lucky to have done all of that, and I wouldn't change having done them. But now that I've done them, in this part, in this time, where do I put my focus? Well, as different things inform other things, like the answers are all there. So I kept hearing, like Dorothy saying, well, where are you going are you going to do this now? Are you going to do this? Or who's going to? And so that conversation, Mark saying, with life changes, do you want to do this? Who's going to do this? Because we now need to focus. So, and then meeting you, and with you about the PHI Beads, saying you've got so many of the PHI Beads, you need to focus and say, this one for this one for this, and choose. And so interesting how that conversation about PHI Beads actually relates to my life at this point, right? And so if I put what Dorothy and Mark and you and so, put this, and what I'm reading and what I'm hearing, that the answers are all there. And sometimes I'm the one that's sharing a conversation with a client that's actually informing me what I'm needing to hear, right? So thank you to you. And I heard what you said, and more importantly than just to the subject, as everything informs everything else, it helped inform the rest of everything else too. And it all comes together.
So we should reopen that conversation about doing some work together then. because because now it would be possible. Now with a channeled focus energy, it would be possible. Look, you know I love you. I know all the things that you're doing are fabulous. We haven't even touched on any of them because we got so tied up in all of this. But I want to encourage people to go to your website, lifechanges.com. I want to invite people to go to PHI Beads, and all of this is going to be, all the different websites are going to be in the show notes. Every one of these things are brilliant, brilliant, brilliant creations. And people can benefit from them. And I want you to have the benefit of benefiting from them by knowing about them, by opening up conversation with Filippo. Filippo, when you look out your window at the world that's out there, is this the world you always dreamed of handing over to the future generation?
I have said for a while, I don't have children of my own, but I have said for a while to my family, with all the good that they have brought forward in each other and in us, my parents and my siblings and their kids, I've said the buck stops here. With so many of the issues, and I'm lucky to be in a family now. We've had our growth, we've had our learning curves and our growing strain as growing pains, but I feel like we're all in the same place in that we're all saying we don't want to pass certain things on just because they were passed on to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's something that I believe in with my family and my friends. It's something that I believe in with the show that we do. It's something that I believed in when I worked for corporate America, when I would be told by authority higher than me to tell my subordinates that they needed to such and such, and I wouldn't tell them. So the authorities would go around me to tell them.
Yeah.
And I would get upset at the authorities saying, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Well, you didn't tell them." And because I didn't like it when you told me.
Right.
And so I'm looking for a better way to tell them so that I don't do to them what you did to me. So so is this the world that I was dreaming of passing on? Not necessarily what I see, obviously, but what I believe is possible from here. Yeah.
Cool. So what would be one thing that you would give people tangible that they could go from the world that you see to the possibility that you know is there, that would be the bridge? Just one simple thing that they might do that would start that bridge.
I would say be as honest as they can with themselves.
Fabulous.
Be in integrity with yourself.
Fabulous. Tell us again how to get in touch with you.
Call me.
Call me. Phone me. Email me. Write me.
Could I just mention The Little Dog That Could?
Yes, of course you can.
2 books on my list that I recommend: The Mosaic and The Little Dog That Could.
Thank you for recommending mine.
TheLittleDogThatCould.com. So through any of the websites, but I would say lifechangeshow.com. And not only because that's where I'm putting most of my attention, and it doesn't mean that I won't be focused. The things go in cycle, right? There will be a time when the book becomes a movie. There will be a time when I'm asked to sing in that movie, and I'll do that. But my energy is on Life Changes and PHI Beads and Recalibration. So if people go to the show, I would love a website. I would love for them to contact me there, whether it's for one-on-one coaching or for group coaching. However, while they're there looking to contact me, I hope they find something that speaks to them.
Yeah.
And informs whatever process they're going through in their life for their own betterment.
Fabulous. And The Little Dog That Could is a charming story that will touch you deeply. And so I'm sure it's there. I'm sure it's available. I'm sure you can get it there. And so please do that. Let me take just a minute and summarize. I think for me, one of the most beautiful moments in life is that unexpected moment where someone that you believe is somebody, you suddenly see has become somebody else. And it wasn't because of anything you did or someone else did, or it wasn't because you necessarily held the space for them to go into it. It's just because like grapes over time mature into a fine wine. It just sometimes takes time for people to sit in their own situation. It is such an honor for me to introduce Filippo to you. And it's such an honor for me to watch the process of how he moves through some of the things he does. He recalibrates. Maybe that's the best word to use since that's his program. But there's been a big recalibration since the time I left Solomon now. And I want for people who are listening to understand that where we are now is just where we are now. It isn't where we'll be even in a minute from now. And that every moment is an opportunity to allow yourself to open up to a fresh new energy that can take you to just amazing places that you never dreamed possible. I say this with all the love of my heart. I never expected to find a Filippo today that would have been able to cut off the limbs of that tomato plant. Because I sat with him over numerous conversations and just watched him bubble up with an absolutely brilliant enthusiasm. It was delightful and fabulous to watch. And yet I watched it pull him one thing after another away from one another. And I pulled back. And I said, I just don't think it's my time to be here with you right now because I don't see this is happening. And today, darn it, he shows up on my doorstep, and he has done more than I ever would have imagined. My bad for not imagining that he could have done that more and could do that. My bad for not continuing to hold the space, even though in some ways I did. What I want you to see in this story above all other stories is that how stories can change, how we can recalibrate ourselves to live the life that we are currently living, how we can recalibrate our thought processes to let go of things that no longer serve us, how we can recalibrate our belief systems to beliefs that are beliefs that we've heard over and over, but now suddenly we know. How we can recalibrate to be generous of time and energy and spirit, to not have to change somebody in that moment, like Filippo talked about, but just give them the time to work it through. The recalibration will happen. I hope you will not only walk, but run. I hope you will not only run, but fly. I hope you will soar through this world. And I hope if along the way you feel that Filippo can help you, you will go to lifechanges.com and talk to him, have a conversation, see what he's doing. There are millions of things that he's doing that we haven't even talked to. Not millions. Let's be realistic. There's 5 or 6 or 8 things that he's doing, that he does, that we didn't even have a chance to even touch. And one of them I'm wearing, which I'm really moved by, which is these PHI beads. Read about them, experience them, and let the experience of Filippo help you recalibrate your life. Filippo, again, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking your time to be here with us. Mosaic people, I want to thank you again for the most valuable commodity you could ever give, which is your time and your energy, for sitting here with us and for allowing me to introduce my friend to you as my friends. I hope if you like the show, you will like it on Apple Podcasts, and you will like it and write a review if you feel to. If not, that's okay. And more than anything, I hope that being a fly on the wall today allows you to meet a person that you might never have met before. Go and listen to the shows that Filippo's done. You can see them all archived on lifechanges.com. Until next time, thank you for being with us, and God bless.